Hey, it is Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I'm your host, Ben Cross, and I am joined from wonderful Sweden by Lena Rekdal, the founder of the global mobility firm NIMMERSION. How are you, Lena?
I'm great, thank you, Ben.
And we find ourselves on this lovely beach today,
I
as you can
know.
see.
Thank you for thank you for providing me with a beach. I'm from Sweden, so we have had snow. We still walk on snow in parts of the woods, actually. So
Now,
being on a
and
beach is very nice for me.
and forgive me because I've never been to Sweden, but do you have beaches in Sweden?
We do in the south, but we have very long winters.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm in Michigan. We have long winters as well. It's still like
Oh yeah.
40, 45 degrees here. Where in Sweden are you, Lena?
Well, right now I'm working from my country house. So we have been working from home for 6 weeks, obviously due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to go to our country house because A, we could ski here. And also it's out in the woods. So we're very fortunate. Our neighbors are here as well. So we have some company and we can go outside much more than we would be able to do in the city of Stockholm, which is where we're from. And
Okay.
things happened pretty quickly in Stockholm. So we made our whole office started working remotely in a matter of a couple of days.
Wow. And I want to talk about that. I see some folks coming in here on LinkedIn. So if you are with us on the live stream on LinkedIn, please go ahead, hit that like button. Also, go ahead and drop in your name, your company's name. I want to know where in the world you are watching us from right now, and I will give you shout outs. This is a dialogue, a conversation, so I want to hear questions and comments that you might have for Lena or myself as we discuss the future of relocation post COVID 19. We're going to be talking about comparisons between how Sweden has been going through this and how the US has been going through this. We're going to talk about things that inspire us. We're going to have a very nice conversation. I'm looking forward to it a lot right now. It looks like my phone is frozen. No, I'm back now. Okay, cool. Let me know if you have any technical difficulties. Also, drop that over there. And let's see, we got a couple people checking in here. Tim Quirk, good day from Western New York. Lovely. Hey, Tim. Sandra Clara, happy Monday, all. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Well, thank you, Sandra. I appreciate it. Sandra wrote me the nicest note the other day, just expressing some gratitude and appreciation for what we do here, and it means so much, Sandra. And I thank you so much for that. Her tuning in and leaving comments all the time means the world to me. So thank you to all of you who are checking in. Mark Muss, Love and Relo from Switzerland. Yes, we're getting the global perspective here. Greg Day from Star International Movers in DC. Lisa Mendelson, Heya from Prague. Looking forward to the convo. Lisa, when did you go to Prague? I thought you were in the city. Girl, you got to catch me up on that. I don't know what's going on here. So anyway, so we got people checking in. Keep checking in. Hit those like buttons, please. Hit those celebration buttons as well. It means the world to see the little hand claps going up the side. Lynn Greenberg, John Heithouse, howdy from Nashville. Wonderful. Um, Lena, I want to understand first. So here you are. You founded and you've been running this global mobility company in Sweden. Please just give us an understanding. How did you get started with that?
Well, it was actually 25 years ago this month. So,
Wow,
and
congratulations on the anniversary. Let's give her a hand
thank
clap
you.
in the comments there, the little green celebration button.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been a fantastic job. It's been a really fun industry to be in. And when I came up with this brilliant idea, I didn't actually know it was an industry that existed. I thought I invented the industry of global mobility. And it turned out that obviously it had been around for a long time, but it was quite new in Europe and it was brand new in Sweden.
Hmm.
So already from the very start, I did both relocation and immigration, which is a really exciting combo, and it works really well. It's a good marriage, although the people that do it are typically totally different as personalities and skill sets.
Well, I was going to ask, because which was your entree in? Was it immigration? Was it relocation management? What was that first thread that you started to unwind, into this whole thing?
Well, what happened was I came from a family, and we moved a lot. My dad went to MIT when he was 17. He's Norwegian. My mother is Swedish, and I was born in North Africa, in Tunisia. So, and then we had lived in Switzerland and Norway and Sweden, etc. But my dad always really wanted to go back to the US. And so eventually we did. So we moved to the US in 1984 on the 4th of July. So it's a good date because I'll never forget. And it was around the same time I started college, and then I lived there for about 7 years. So I left Sweden as a teenager, and I moved back to Sweden as an adult. And I actually moved alone because my family stayed on in the US for another 20 years. So they lived there for almost 30 years. So it was my second home, and I would always say I'm going home when I went back to the US. And when I moved back to Sweden, I was on my own. My parents and siblings, they still lived in the US. And I had never sort of navigated through the adult things that you have to do, like having a job, having well, obviously I thought having found an apartment in New York City would have prepared me for the Swedish housing market, and it didn't. It was much harder.
Well,
I moved six times.
Tell me about the Swedish housing market, because I actually have friends who are expats from Sweden who are moving back to Stockholm in July. I think they've just got an apartment. So they're leaving the U.S. and going back to Sweden. But what is that housing market like? I think people in the U.S. are curious to hear that as well.
Yeah. It is one of the worst housing markets in the world. We've had a housing crisis since 1905. It's ridiculous, and it's a political situation where few solutions are found. So Stockholm is really growing exponentially. It's a great hub. It's probably doubled in size in the past 20 years. And there's also a lot of regulations around this. So in most cities, like in Prague, as you mentioned, someone here is in Prague right now. They have fantastic housing for expats. It's close to the schools. It's brand new. Pleasing people who have been expats in Prague moving to Stockholm is difficult. It's really, really hard. It's also expensive in relation to the disposable income that most people get in Sweden.
Okay.
So that was something that I just met immediately head on. I moved 6 times in 18 months. It was a very uncomfortable situation. And so I can really empathize with all the people who moved to Stockholm. So it's hard. For people who are maybe, if your clients that are going back to Sweden, or they may be buying something, most Swedes would do that because it's just unsustainable to have such short lets for a longer period of time. And then you have something called the Swedish Auction. So an apartment is typically shown on a Sunday and sold by Tuesday. And you get 15 minutes to actually look at this place that is an enormous investment. But right now, because
a Swedish auction, does that just refer to the compressed time, or is it actually a different style of auction, like you hear Chinese auctions, you hear other types of auctions? I mean,
it's a different, because usually if you would look at a property in the US and let's say it's $1 million, and then you would expect to maybe pay 900,000 because the price would go down. So you have an asking price and your purchase price is below the asking price. Okay. In Sweden, you start with $1 million and it can end up anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 or even higher. So, and we've had a great real estate market for the people that are in it. for the past 20, since 91, almost 30 years. It's been only going in one direction. Right now, thanks to all the uncertainty in the world, it seems the prices are going down a little bit, which is a very welcome news. And we have very low interest rates.
So you've founded and run this global mobility company in Sweden for 25 years. Again, congratulations with that feat and accomplishment. And so you've seen a lot, I imagine, in your tenure as a leader of this company. And we've gone through a lot of undulations and ups and downs and crises globally and I'm sure locally that I'm not even a party to. So I have a question here, and it's, what has it been like living through crises and recessions? And what are some of the learnings that might help us now?
Well, I started in 1995, which was a crisis in Sweden, and we had 500% interest rates, marginal interest rates. The banks had recently been closed for 3 weeks. It was really major. So when I started the company, there was definitely a reason for me to be cost conscious. I started the company in my apartment in the hallway, and I picked up the furniture from the garbage room in my building.
So you started a business. I got to understand this. Let me back up for a second, because what you're saying I think is incredible. You started a business in 1995 in Sweden, where, and most people probably don't know this, in Sweden there was a nationwide economic crisis, and you started a relocation company in the midst of that crisis, which still 25 years later is alive and going strong. I mean, I got to ask you, like, can you just share with us, what was that like? I mean, what made you decide to take that leap? Did you even know how hard that was going to be? And what are some of the learnings? I mean, in the midst of that, what are some of the learnings that we can take away from that?
Well, I think that, just to back up a little bit, why did I start it? It's because I found the Swedish society very difficult. And I thought to myself, I grew up here, I know tons of people, I speak Swedish, I'm culturally at least half Swedish. And at that point, I was half, maybe even more American than Swedish, because I'd been there for a long time, right? So what I did was that I called around to all the big companies and I said, how do you take care of your expats? Because if I find it hard, I'm guessing they do too. And my initial plan was to write a book for people that moved to Sweden, which is also what I did. So the foundation of the company was that I wrote a book for expats, and I called all these huge multinationals, and they all said, oh, please do, we'll buy 1,000 copies. Every single expat needs to get one, because we don't know how to explain things to them. And I said, sure. Said and done. I wrote a book, and I gave out or published this book in 3 editions. And the last edition was actually 10,000 copies. And what happened was I was called up by one of the big four consultancy, tax consultancy firms. And they said, well, can you take care of all our expats? And I said, well, I wouldn't know how to do that. I just wrote a book about it, but, and they said,
I
well,
just wrote a book about it. I don't know anything about doing it.
Well, it was all theory.
I love it.
So then they said, well, you have to take care of all our expats. I was like, okay, well, I guess I will try. So that's what I did. And it turned out to be such a fun job. It was wonderful to meet people. Largely my clients were American, and that was really fun for me, because I felt like I could really contribute to them and to their, giving them a smooth arrival. So that was lots and lots of fun. And it was also a crisis. And for the first 2 weeks, I was like cleaning my apartment. And then I was thinking, I'm obviously not somebody's housewife. I better start making some money. So I went out there, I found clients. And in the first few years were really tough. And my salary was obviously low. And I had extra gigs on the side with market research and things like that. But eventually, I was really fortunate, because global mobility was on the rise. Companies were having rotational programs, and I was the first one there. So I had an enormous opportunity and very fortunate timing.
So a
And
couple
I
of
had
things
the
that,
skills I needed to do it.
yeah,
So
well, and the skills. It's so funny you talk about the skills that you had. Was I grew up here. I know the language, and I mean those skills. I mean, no offense, but those skills seem like a lot of people could check those boxes, right?
mhm,
But I think what you saw was you saw the story that was happening in a way other people didn't see it. I mean, to your point, back in '95. To your knowledge, there was no relocation companies in Sweden. I mean, it had been a thing over in the U.S., but unbeknownst, right, to you, and so you saw an opportunity there. And I think it's also interesting to look at here we are, going through a crisis, and we can look at countries and see what they're doing, and if we're not doing it, those are business models that can be transportable and brought over. And another thing that you say that I think is interesting is and maybe you didn't say it, but I mean, this is my observation is starting a business is difficult
mhm.
regardless. So you almost don't know you're in a crisis because it's going to suck either way. So
Yeah,
you might as well just, I mean, do something with some upside because I know there's people right now that are watching this that are displaced from their current, their previous jobs,
yeah,
because of this. And it's like, that's going to be difficult anyway. So taking the leap and making an opportunity out of it, which is obviously paid off, could be a great option for you. This is great, and I want to talk about a couple other crises that you've seen afterwards. I want to give shout outs real quick to some people that are chiming in over here. We've got Lynn Greenberg from New York, from Pivot App. Hey, Lynn.
hi
John
Lynn.
Hidehouse. Yeah, Lynn's great. I don't know if you know her, but she's wonderful. John Fernandez. Hello from Scottsdale, Arizona. Mary O'Donnell. Hi, Love and Relo. I'm in SoCal, Southern California. King Relocation Services. Hey, Mary. Roy Ramirez checking in from Mini Moves in Broadview, Illinois. Damien O'Farrell. Hello from Roma, Italy. Beautiful. Susan Myers checking in. Bobby Crisp in North Carolina. Jonathan Farmer in Dallas. A couple other people, like my friend Ann, friend of the show here, Ann Knapp. Hi, Ben and Lena. Greetings from
Hi Ann.
Scottsdale also. And then Ryan Beal, who's going to be on the show this week, who's a frontline first responder, actually, who's going to
Oh,
kind of
wow.
give us, yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think it's always important not to lose the sight of those folks out there that are doing so much for us. Katie Linehan, hello from Connecticut. Love, love, love this topic. Doug Powers, headset is good. Thank you, Doug. Kelly Gurin, hello from Phoenix. Kelly from Shift. Awesome. We got some great people, 24 folks right now watching. India, we have Six Walls, Prashant. Man, we got a lot of continents represented right now. I'm very enthusiastic about this. So, all right, so Lena, back to this topic. So we're in '95. You're navigating through this. You're in startup mode. You break through that. What is the next major crisis that you ran into, and what could we learn from that?
Well, then it was smooth sailing for a while. And then in 2002, we had the dot-com crisis. And we actually lost our biggest client, that was Microsoft at the time. And it was 30% of our turnover.
Wow.
And so that was bad timing. And also other clients obviously had a tough time. So my vision was I'm going to keep everybody on board. So I went to the bank and I told them I was going to refurbish my kitchen. So I took out a loan, and that was I put that money into the company, and I didn't have a salary for a year.
Wow.
And what I learned from that was to have a buffer. You have to have the margins, you have to have money in the bank, and you have to be prepared for a crisis. And it was tough, but it worked out, and that wasn't such a long, it was about a year, but then it was over, and then things started really going through the roof. So by the time 2008 rolled around, first of all, I was, I think, a little bit more prepared than a lot of my peers, and because I was already so globally connected. So I realized pretty quickly that this is going to hit Sweden as well. And we had grown a lot before 2008, and we were so well prepared. So I sat down with my team and I said, we don't have to have a single case for a year, and we will still survive. So we were in really good shape. And so that taught me that to go into a crisis and be solid financially makes a huge difference. And since we had grown so much in the years prior to that, we really needed to consolidate. We needed to work on processes. And we had a mantra called do it right the first time. And around this time, the European Quality Seal came around, and we were one of the first companies in the world to get that. And we had the time to do it. And we did such hard work on that. And we tweaked all our processes. We developed a website, all of that. And we didn't even notice, but we increased our turnover by 35% that year. And it really wasn't our focus.
Coming out of 08, coming out of the global downturn, you actually increased. And when you're saying increased turnover, you mean new clients or business that was flowing through the business?
Yeah. No,
wow.
Just turnover as far as financials. And we just didn't even realize it because we had such focus on the improvements and how to do things better that we didn't even realize. So at the end of the year, we were like, oh, well, this really wasn't a crisis. We have worked really hard. And soon after that, we turned 15. And then we went to Venice for 4 days and lived at the Cipriani, which is the best hotel in the world, because we figured only the best is good enough for us. And it was actually really a learning experience because we really monitored how they did things, because it's also the service sector.
So in the States here, we always look at Ritz-Carlton and look at the way that they do things from a service standpoint and take learnings out of that. I've heard numerous speakers talk about that. So I want to just really quick go back here and count these things, because this is what I'm observing. The first crisis was in 95, and it was a Swedish crisis. And my takeaway from that is, starting a business is going to be hard. Might as well start in a crisis because it's hard anyway, right? So front load the pain, right? And then in 2002, you had the dot-com bubble burst, and the lesson learned there was keep enough money in the bank so that you can absorb the downtimes, because there will be downtimes and you won't see them coming. And then in 08, what I'm learning from you right now is that now you have time. So with time comes process improvements. And that's so key right now, because how many times have we reached out to clients or to partners or even internally, and we said, hey, I got this amazing idea. We have to do this. And they say, well, we don't have enough time. We're busy.
Yeah.
That's like 8 on the priority chart. Maybe when we get to it, just put it on the list, and when we get to it, right? Well, now we have time. And time is our most valuable resource. So what are we doing to maximize the time that we have? Because you know what? We're going to come out of this thing, whether it's in a week, a month, or a year, and we're not going to have that time anymore.
No.
So you have time now, and use it. So this is very interesting. And so here we are in 2020, and we are going through COVID-19. And what are you learning today?
Well, we actually, again, we came out of a year, I think we increased our turnover by 45%. We have a really amazing 2019 behind us. We started off the year talking about we really want to work with quality. We want to do essentially what we did in 2008. We just didn't exactly know that we would have this much time on our hands that we actually do now. But that was our aim, the year of consolidation, to really look at what tech tools can we use to our advantage. When you grow quickly, you're running very fast, and then you have to slow down, monitor, assess, and think ahead and have a strategy. And now we actually have the time to do that again, which is, that's one thing. And then with the pandemic, I think that what comes ahead of everything else, and that is something we share with everybody in the entire world. Right now, I have something in common with every single other person in this world, and that's actually a pretty good feeling. We're all in this together. And what our first and foremost responsibility is to stay healthy and to not spread the virus, obviously, to other people. And So that comes before anything else. And then we're fortunate enough to be in a good situation, just like in 2008. We're solid. We can hibernate. We can, be fine for a while. But obviously, we want to sort of provide value for our clients. We want to help them, especially on the immigration side, which is tricky because the legislature doesn't take COVID into consideration. With the furloughs and maybe reduced salaries. I mean, they're around the world. We see a lot of companies do different things to try to maintain people, but they may not be able to. And the people that are really the first people to suffer from this can be the work permit holders. So we really want to help HR make the right decisions and see what can you do, what can't you do, because this is a population that doesn't have the same terms as the Swedes or the EU nationals.
So I want to talk about Sweden specifically in COVID, and I want to talk about what are you seeing there socially, what are you seeing there from a business standpoint. You talked a little bit about the work permit holders. So I guess maybe can you just, I mean, I'm seeing on the news and stuff that Sweden has taken a different tact with the social distancing and how they're prescribing, stay at home. I'd love to hear just from you as a person who lives there.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What's the result been? I mean, we're all curious and figuring this out as we go.
Yeah, I think that's it. You put nail on the head there, because it's exactly that. No one really knows. This is a new virus. We don't know how it acts. We don't have testing material. I think we've all sort of been taken by surprise, although, of course, Bill Gates did a whole TED Talks about this already in 2015. Along with a lot of other countries, this came as a big surprise. And we're all running behind the virus to try to catch up and figure out what to do and how to do it best. Sweden has chosen a different methodology, and the reasoning for our CDC is different from what most other countries have decided is the best cure or prevention. So Sweden's still open. Schools are still open, not upper high school and universities, but daycare and up till the age of 15, which is unusual. We're the only country in Europe that has an open school, actually. And we were the last country along with the UK. Although we're the last man standing, because we're the only country that has open schools.
And what have you seen the results in that being? I mean, are you seeing increased cases? Is it working? Is it not working? Is it too early? What are you seeing?
I think it's hard to tell because countries have different ways of measuring. And just like many other countries, Germany seemed to be in a fantastic place. They're really testing. They have the tests. They have rolled out a really clear plan on how they're going to do this. Well, I'm not sure. I think that it sounds good. Both methods sound good, but I'm not the person to say what's right or wrong. I really don't know. And unfortunately, I don't think most people don't know. We'll all find out. But it'd be good with 2020 vision on this one. We actually, as an office, we had a corona case very early on. Together with my operations manager, we had already planned for remote work. And having a person become sick in the office, obviously we got really nervous. I'm very concerned for her. Fortunately, she was very sick for a week, but she's actually been up and running and already in the second week. She's young and strong and a real trooper. But because of that, we decided to go into remote work immediately. So it took a day or two for our IT people to do the VPNs and the secure lines, et cetera, et cetera. But we were already, so that was actually early March. So we were out of the office very quickly and working from home is also, that's a whole story of its own. It works well for me. I usually do it a few days a week. And my operations manager, she also works from home a few days a week, but it was new for the rest of them. And it does require self-leadership and
Yeah.
to be a self-starter and things like that. What we did was actually, we decided, because we didn't know if we will all be infected by the virus, because we had it in our office, and obviously we were sitting close to one another
Sure.
and so on. So what we started doing was that we had a morning call every morning at 9, and we also have an afternoon call. And that was to make sure to find out, how is everyone feeling? Are you feeling okay? Is somebody getting sick? How can we hand over cases? How can we be up to date on what everybody else is doing? So plan B can immediately become plan A, should it be needed. And it actually turned out to be a very nice social time for us all. So we actually talk more now, I think, than, or at least I do, than what we did. I have much more of a writing job and, you know, the admin around the company.
I want to, and we got a question, so I'm going to put my question on the back burner here, and let's take a question here from the audience. Let's see here. Okay, shout out to Yaron from Flat Rate, New York. Ken Nickel Lane asks, what are the most challenging issues for HR in Sweden right now from an immigration standpoint? What is the most difficult challenge right now? So, HR, immigration in Sweden. What are we seeing right now? What's the most difficult challenge?
Right. Hi, Ken. Thanks for asking. The most difficult thing is actually the different government relief programs. And we touched upon this earlier, but we're allowed to do short work allowance, which is what you would call furlough or reduced hours. And that means you can bring the salary down, but also the work time, but it has to correspond completely. So a lot of companies have actually lowered people's salaries, but you can't do that for a work permit holder, because then you won't be able to renew the work permit. So it really kind of limits what you can do. And a lot of our clients don't have collective agreements with the unions. And then it's also easy to kind of miss these basic things, or you may have to change somebody's role, or you change the hours, and things like that. So it's just good to be very attentive, and which is where we're actually running a webinar on this on Wednesday, just to help HR. So we have good sign up for that. And we're also...
Where can people, if people want to attend that, if somebody's watching right now and they want to attend that webinar, do you still have spots available for that?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
How could somebody
and if they
register
go
for
to
that?
my profile on LinkedIn, there's actually an invite.
Okay.
So they can just press that link. Thanks. So
I want to go and kind of go back to something you were talking about, right? So you're saying, okay, you know, COVID hit us, and I applaud you, by the way, for being honest, you know, and saying, hey, this affected our office personally, because I think a lot of business owners might not even say that, you know, they might not even admit that, right? So I applaud you for your honesty there and talking candidly about that. And then you switch to going to work from home, which, you know, obviously I think sounds like the right idea. And you're doing these twice a day calls and you're keeping connected. But let's take a step forward and let's look at post COVID-19. What does work life look like? But maybe even more importantly to us who are watching right now, what does relocation and global mobility look like in a post COVID-19 world?
well, I think global mobility also says global solutions, and we're all in this together. And I think with the cooperation between governments, companies, and people, we'll also find ourselves on the other side of this. I think just the basic things is that essentially we're social creatures and we work best when we are together.
That's right. I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, and I think that HR, now they have a situation that most HR, maybe young HR, have never been in, because they haven't had to lay off people and and there's been growth for a long time, and they're faced with uncomfortable conversations and uncomfortable decisions, and it is what it is. But I think that when we get to the other side of this, people will want to travel. It will be part of their career. And even though I think we have very quickly become great at working from home, putting virtual teams together. We're getting much, much better and learning how to work remotely. And there are obviously examples out there that are doing it completely like Slack. And they call it work distribution or distributed work because they don't have an office, so they're not working remotely. But there are a bunch of companies you can really look to and learn from. And I think we see that working from home requires self-leadership, so that's a skill we need to have. But essentially, I think people want to travel. Everybody travels a lot, especially within Europe. It's crazy. I mean, I have never been stranded for 6 weeks for this long as I have now. It's been years. And I think that people will not, you can see, let's say if you're in a low-cost country and you have skills such as you may be a software engineer, you're a coder, and obviously that is very sought after. And you can sit in a low-cost country and you can have a high cost of living employer,
like a high
and
wage
that can
job
be
in
a
low-cost
nice
country.
leverage thing, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But people who want to work internationally, they do it for more than that. It's also to work well together, you have to immerse yourself in the culture. You have to know your colleagues and you need to meet them. And young people there are lots and lots of research on this, obviously, what young, talented people value. And that is the opportunity to work abroad. So I think it will definitely bounce back, but we will see a reduced non-essential business travel, especially, some people travel 200 days a year. I think there will be far fewer.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I think, yes, I think there will be a long-term indelible mark left on us in the way that we do business, and I do think we're learning more about work from home. We're learning how to make it work, but we're also learning where its shortcomings and the gaps are. And I think that what you said right when you kind of began to answer this question, is really at the essence of this is that there is a benefit to being in person with someone. And it may not be necessary for every conversation, but there are just inescapable benefits, or that you just can't they just don't transfer, to the Zoom world. There's these moments that are had in the break room or over a company luncheon or, after a big meeting. I mean, what do you do after a big meeting when the boss comes in and says, our new strategy is going to be this, or gosh, we're going to have to lay some people off, or something big happens? What do? You cluster, right? You go and you find your work friend that you trust, who you've had a glass of wine with, and you just like start sharing, and you're just like,
Yeah.
gosh, Maria, what do you think about this? Well, I don't know, Ben, what do you think about it? Maybe we should look at this, maybe we should try this. And that kind of collaboration is so hard to replicate via Slack or via Teams or Zoom, because it's recorded, right?
Yeah.
So I can't tell you I can't have a side conversation with you, Lena, and say, I think this is crazy. We really need to be looking at this, and this, because I have no way to have that conversation with you in a way that I feel comfortable and candid. And so there's moments like that, or there's times, what, I look at Google. I think that Google had a policy like one day a week you get to work on anything you want to work on, and it becomes your
Yeah.
passion project, right?
Yeah.
The idea being that people are going to pursue their passion, and things are going to grow from that the Google bigwigs had never even envisioned, right? And I've had passion projects like that I've worked on at work, after hours, before work, during lunch. I carve out 30 minutes during my workday and do stuff my boss doesn't even know I'm doing, but I'm exploring ideas and I'm building things, right? And I might draw in somebody from marketing or from creative or from operations to test ideas out. And in the formalized world of meetings and recorded conversations and recorded video talks, people are going to be more apprehensive about having these candid collaborations. So, I think companies who find a way to balance the two are going to be successful. And then when we look at companies who have traditionally used mobility rotations as strategic learning opportunities within their organization, I think about GE, right? GE is famous for doing this. Every 9 months, they'll rotate somebody around to get operations knowledge, to get marketing knowledge, to get knowledge of a specific country, business unit. And there's a reason they put them there physically.
Yeah.
And so I just I hope that people don't rush to do the remote workforce and the distributed work model without understanding and caring for the gaps that pop up when you do that.
Yeah, definitely trust and inspiration.
But I think we can also agree that this has forced us to break through some of these walls that we may not have had. I mean, you talked about it perfectly as a business leader. As soon as this happened, we decided we're going to work from home. It took us a couple of days, but now we fully have that capability. And now every company has that capability, whether they wanted to or not. And so, here, my little thing, I don't know why that popped up. But now that they have that capability, I think there's going to be a shift into it. So as we shift into it, inevitably there will be a shift of some fractional amount. Will it be 10%, 20%, 50%? We don't know. And over what time, we don't know. But how does that change the way as service providers that we support our mobility clients? Lena, that's my question for you.
You're right. I mean, with the whole social distancing things, certain part of the services can't be done, but we have actually had quite let's say, home finding. It's a really symbolic, important thing for the person who's moving, because it's actually the only thing you can touch and feel. So it becomes more important than it actually is, because people are always happy wherever they live afterwards. But it's something about going to the new location and to view the properties and get a feeling, and you feel when you walk in the door, is this my home, kind of thing. But we have for years actually worked with companies that have a really high rate of recruitment. They're bringing in people from all over the world. They are typically in a work permit process, which means they're not allowed to enter the country until that's completed and done. And the companies also needed those people yesterday or yesteryear even. So we have had a virtual home finding programs in place for years already. So we go and we view with them, or we do it on FaceTime, and we may show them this is the way the street looks, and this is the entrance, and we help them benchmark, this is an old building, which means this, and this area is like that, and we have a ton of information on all the areas and pictures, etc.
Well, and
so
especially
a ton
in
of
Sweden,
people have a place to live when they come.
I was going to say, just especially in Sweden, when you're talking about how fast real estate transactions happen, something goes on the market one day and the next day it's sold for $1.5 million, $500,000 over ask. I mean, you have to be agile, right?
Yeah, you have to be very fast. It's a very stressful thing for people. That a lot of our clients are uncomfortable with that. But we've noticed that when you actually move to Sweden, you are excited about work. They're talented people. They've been recruited from across the world. These are amazing people that are coming here, and they're excited to get to work. So rather than putting them in a hotel or a hostel or a temporary apartment, when they come, they move right into their place and life begins. So instead of having this major hurdle and difficult search, as the sort of the entry to Sweden, and before that the local registrations become difficult, etc., they actually hit the ground running and they can focus on work and not be distracted by lots of obstacles and things that are a pain in the neck. So we, from that perspective, we're very well prepared for this, which was nice. And that's just thanks to a rotten housing market. But currently,
Well,
we're
I
really
love how
benefiting from that.
we talk a lot about silver linings, and you always seem to see the silver lining. Downturn. Okay, I'm going to create a business. Oh, the housing market's been rotten, so now we're really well prepared for this, right?
Yeah.
Like I love the optimism there, and I think it serves you very well. We've got some great questions coming in here. I want to honor these people who have taken time to contribute to the conversation.
Cool. Thanks.
Ed Cohen, hey Ed. Hello Lena, hello Ben. Regarding assignee preparation for deployment, to what extent do you get involved with assessing the assignees, transferee and family, for success prediction while on assignment? Like
That's
pre-decision
such a
counseling
great
assessments?
question, Ed. We have one client that we worked with for years, and they actually they put up a whole new service department in Stockholm. And one of the things we did for them, and one of the things I've done for many other companies, was to have give everybody a half-day area tour. So they would always, the process they have is that they bring the people in to meet everyone in the office and get an idea about the work, etc. And then we were given this half day, and our key thing was obviously to sell the location, sell the lifestyle, sell the flat organizations, and sell the company. The company took really good care of the people they brought in, which is obviously, relocation is now often viewed as part of the employer brand. So it doesn't necessarily even go to the sort of the global mobility account. It goes on under the employer branding account, because it makes life a lot easier for the recruiters and the talents if they often have intranets and they get to talk to somebody who's already there, etc. But part of our assignment was also to say, hey, this is never going to work. And the reason could be that you have maybe a dual career couple and you have a spouse who definitely doesn't want to move to Sweden, or you could have a sick family member, or it's just not a good time in their lives. The kids may not be the right age for a cross-border move at this point. And that was something we would feed back to the companies. So they would maybe put a little bit of focus on that. And and sometimes it could be like, well, this is family, but the spouse is very concerned about this, and this. And most such problems have solutions. So we would just help them figure out, what can we do for this transferee to really, we had one family, and they had actually been to Rome, Damien, for their honeymoon. They came from the US. And they thought it was so old, so they couldn't stand it. They had to go back early from their honeymoon. And then they were moving to Sweden. And Stockholm is a city with many old buildings, and very little has been built centrally, and especially at this time. And then we told the company, these guys are, they're not going to be happy with an old kitchen. And the company said, all right, well, we want to be the best employer in the world. What's it going to cost to put in a new one? And they did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, see, now, and now that is strategic use of your relocation partner. And I think that companies who really are getting mobility are using their partners strategically, almost in advance of the assignment, as deal makers. Right. Then and your client said, we want to be the best, which means we have to recruit the best. And what's it going to take? And it's not just what's the number going to be, but what is the service? What is the partnership that's required to make this life for them where we need them?
Yeah.
I love that. We've got some more comments here as well. More questions. Let's see here. Sandra, we'll go to Sandra here. Hi, Lena. Hi, Lena. What sectors are you seeing still discussing moves at this time, and involving what other countries from or to? What sectors? What industry
Yeah,
sectors?
I would say the tech industry still the startups, the scale ups, definitely still recruit. There's a lot of cooperation and collaboration between companies. So while the airlines had to furlough 90% of their staff, there were others that have pharmacies with home deliveries, and they needed 150 people. And in the medical field needs a lot of people. So a lot of the airline people went, and they understand hospitality. They can deal with stressed out people. They're very well trained, so they help out in the hospitals. So we see that, but that would obviously is temporary. But the scale ups and the tech sector is still moving at a very fast pace, and we see that the tech companies are definitely still recruiting. The problem we have there is the travel ban.
Right.
So, and it was just extended till May 15th. So that was a setback. We had hoped for that to be lifted because we've already had that for 30 days.
So to Sandra's second question, involving what other countries do you see mobility to and from? With the travel ban, does that mean it's at a total standstill for the next 3 weeks, or is there
No,
exceptions to
but
that,
it's
or how does that work?
across the EU, and anyone who has a home in Sweden, and that is regardless of if you are a work permit holder or a Swede or a EU national. If you have a home to return to, so if you've been on a business trip or vacation, you're allowed back in, or if you're a Swedish national. But if you are, let's say you are an Indian software engineer, and this is your first work permit, you're not allowed to come in. So,
Got it.
so that obviously is difficult for the companies. So, but then you have all these companies laying off staff, and they can move to other companies. So it becomes a closed ecosystem. So it's a great position to be in. If you have needed skills in Sweden, you can still pretty easily find a new job if you're here.
So within the country, so we would call that domestic relocation within
Mhm.
Sweden. You're seeing some of that still happening, but for the most part, international relocations are paused pending the travel ban, except for Swedish nationals
Yes.
and existing. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Let's see here. I got another question here from Ken Nickel Lane, not to be confused with Ken Penny Lane. Ben, I can't help myself sometimes. I'm a dad now. I tell bad jokes. Ben and Lena, don't you think you'll see a rise of partial work from home? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there will be a lot more of that. And I also think it suits some people, and it's just not for others. Some people love to go to an office, to leave home. I can imagine if you have young children, it's difficult to work from home. Microsoft has had this for years. They had work at home Wednesdays, and it's lovely for people who have kids that go somewhere, but quite difficult for people who have other family members. And right now, we are working from home. My spouse and I, and we have a daughter that is not in school, and we definitely disturb one another. And
Mm-hmm.
you have can maybe better equipment in the office rather than having like a small laptop. You have big screens and
Right,
scanners.
multiple screens and yeah,
Yeah.
scanners and all sorts of stuff.
So, what would you say, Ben?
Yeah, so yes, I think there's going to be a rise in work from home. I think people are realizing the downsides of work from home. Like, gosh, my 4-year-old and my 1-year-old like to routinely beat each other up, and it's really hard to do a video conference call right now. Things like that. Or To your point about equipment, or gosh, my Wi-Fi is really not conducive to doing Zoom meetings all day long, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the other thing, and I think the missing of the camaraderie and the collaboration, but I do think partial work from home, I think not only are we going to see more of it, but I think it could also benefit the relocation industry.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because when we look at the places that people want to work and are clamoring to, which in the U.S. is the large tech centers, right, and city centers, right, your Seattle's, your San Francisco's, your New York's, your Boston's, even to some extent like your Austin, Texas's, things like that, right? There's so much demand in these metros that the cost of living becomes astronomically high. And you described the same thing in Stockholm, and it's everywhere, right, in the world. But if you have a partial work from home and you allow people, let's say, 2 or 3 days from home and 2 or 3 days in the office, now instead of me looking within a 30 or 1 hour commute, maybe I'm willing to look between a 1 and 2 hour commute, which enlarges my radius that much more, gives me
Yeah.
so many more housing options that are affordable, right? I'm spending the same amount of time in a car, right? That I am, but now I can look further out. I can maybe I can make a move from Raleigh, North Carolina, which has a very moderate to below average cost of living, and I can go to Northern California, realizing I'm going to be living 2 hours away from San Francisco, but I'm only going in for 2 days a week. And maybe that's okay for me. So I think that's interesting. I think that's going to kind of grease the gears of mobility a little bit. Whereas there was this kind of log jam or bottleneck of housing cost differential,
Yeah.
right? Because in our country, the coasts are double the price of the center of the
Yeah.
country. So things like that could help, I think.
Yeah, it's good for the climate. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to spend hours and hours in a car because he's at a standstill at freeways.
Yeah. Any other questions and comments, please leave them. We only have a couple more minutes here. But there was something that, Lena, we were talking about in our pre-show, and I want to go back to it. Bill Gates. Okay. I really like Bill Gates. I think your feelings might be a touch stronger. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on Bill Gates and why you're so enamored with Bill Gates.
Well, first of all, I love his book recommendations. So I follow them, and that's what I buy every summer. But no, what I really like with Bill Gates is that he's data driven. He finds things out, he puts them into a system, and he acts accordingly. And I also, his genuine interest for health and his incredible generosity. And when he, on Netflix, there was this short series a while back when he goes to Warren Buffett and he says, what's it going to take to completely wipe out polio? And then the two of them decide that that's what we're going to do. That's our goal.
Wow.
He has the opportunity, he has the heart, and he has the brains. And that's what I love about him.
It is nice when you see people that have those kind of means, those kind of otherworldly means and wealth. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and some of the things that they're tackling. And I don't know if it was Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or a combination that started this billionaire challenge thing that they're doing, where they're, donating all this wealth before they die. But I do love it as well. Lena, what are some of the books that you've read that Bill Gates has recommended? I know people are always looking for a book recommendation. You want to give us one maybe that you've read that you really enjoyed?
Oh, yeah. What is it called? It's a gentleman in Moscow.
A Gentleman in Moscow.
Yeah. It's a really good book.
Well, there you have it. And we do have a couple of questions here too. Let's end on these questions here. Joe Fick here. Okay, good question here, Joe. Have rental rates been rising there until last month? He's asking about Stockholm. And is there a shortage of rental housing?
Yes, on both questions.
Yeah. You kind of
We have
went into that in
almost
the beginning.
30 years of uninterrupted increase rental levels. But we see there's a difference now. We
Do
do.
you
So if you're
think that
moving now, that would be a good time.
do you think that it's going to come back
Yeah,
after
because
COVID?
it's not driven, but it's driven by a shortage. It's not driven by what is a reasonable amount of money to pay for a property, and it doesn't relate to your salary, but it's
Hmm.
a shortage-driven market.
Where do people live that can't afford that? Do they just go outside the city? Do they just not move to Stockholm at all because there's no relief no matter how far out you go? I mean,
No, no, no. I mean, you have these variables. You have price, you have size, and you have location. And these variables, you can always play with them. So you go further out, the price is going to drop. You want to be more centrally located, you can go down in size. So a lot of people who come will say, well, we definitely need a home office, we need a guest room. But if you say, well, the 3 nights a year we have guests, maybe we will pay for a hotel then. And then you can live in a more central location. So you have these variables, play with them, and you will find a solution.
love it. Brian Bloom says, I totally agree with you, Ben. I think he's referring to the housing costs and living further out with temporary work from home or partial work from home. Let's see here. Prashant says, what you are saying is what we have assumed here at Six Walls and helping employees find a place to live within 1 or 2 hours of the workplace. Yeah, I mean, we had the one of the co-founders of Six Walls, Nitesh Marotra, last week on, and yeah, I mean, we're talking about the fact he worked for Cisco, living in Boston, and didn't make a move all the way to the Bay Area because it was cost prohibitive, and Boston
Yeah.
is not a cheap place to live either. But I think maybe you see some of that loosening up a little bit. I don't know. Here's another Bill Gates. Mary O'Donnell says, here's another Bill Gates book recommendation: Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. True story. I have to read more. I've decided. I was doing really well with it, and then I started watching Netflix, and books went out the window. But I got to start reading more. Um, we're running out of time, Lena. But I wanted to ask you if you could leave folks with something to consider who are watching now. What would you like to leave them with?
I would like to leave them with there is a life after Corona and to think far ahead. So, not to get too muddled with the here and now. We have to think we're playing a long game. This is a marathon. And that at least gives me hope. And I get more enthusiastic, more solutions oriented. And yeah, this too shall pass.
And it always does, right? And I loved your 4 crises and the learnings that came out of them. So I will leave people with the recap of those. She started a business in '95 during an economic downturn in Sweden. It was hard. Everybody was having a hard time. So it's a great time to start when everybody else is having a hard time too. You're gonna have a hard time anyway. In 2002, I'm trying to get your timeline right off the top of my head. In 2002, when the e-commerce bubble burst, having money in the bank was important. In '08, having time, you had time, and so you retooled and retooled your processes. And I think that's what we find ourselves in now is time to retool, and it will pass. And I thank you so much, Lena, from coming on Love and Relo today, sharing that wisdom with us, sharing that inspiration in your story. It's a wonderful story. Thank you so much for being a part of us today.
Thank you, Ben. It was a lot of fun. You're a great host.
Thank you so much. That means the world. I really appreciate it. Everybody have a wonderful and inspired week, and make your world a little bit better this week. All right.
We will. Thank you.